Revenge films.
Due to an illness from when I was a child, I was physically unable to have children. However, at the time, I never could have imagined that that would be the reason I would be saved one day. I had a girlfriend named Karen that I was dating at the time. She was my colleague in the same department, in the same company, and we got to know each other because I covered for her mistakes a few times. After that, we started going out for drinks after work together, and eventually, that turned into a romantic relationship. However, because she had a bit of an easy-seeming personality, whenever we would be at a company happy hour and she would get drunk, even if I was in attendance as well, she would go and start flirting with other male colleagues and even her subordinates. That must be why she often made mistakes at work, too. About 1 year after we started dating, she started acting strangely and being more distant. Even when we had days off on the same day, we would spend them separately more often than together. I was thinking maybe that was just part of the tide, when right ahead of that, a problem occurred.
David, I'm pregnant with your child.
She suddenly said to me one day, looking really happy. It's a line you often hear in the dramas and the movies, but I never thought it would be directed at me, and I was shocked. I got in my head, asking myself how that could be possible, because no matter how hard I tried, there would be no way that I would be able to have children. So how? I thought about confronting her and asking her what on earth was going on, but because she had been acting so strangely lately, I decided to wait to tell her the truth until later. Is that so? That was so sudden. I'm shocked.
I was always dreaming of a future with you. I want to give birth to your baby.
She made a serious face as she continued to press. So I replied, "You're right. Responsibility should be properly taken. We need to speak to both of our parents and talk about what's going to happen next."
Really? I'm so happy. Well then, I'll get in touch with my parents right away.
Her eyes were sparkling when I said that. Before I went to go meet her parents, I went back to the clinic just in case to be tested again. But the doctor said, "I have to tell you this, but with your body, it would be terribly difficult to have children. So, He was trying to beat around the bush, but I knew exactly what he was trying to say, which was that it wasn't my child, and it must be somebody else's that she was pregnant with. That was when I called my parents, and I explained the situation to them and asked for their advice. My father was actually a doctor, and including the test results from the clinic, he explained all kinds of things to me. On top of that, I told him what I was thinking for next steps, and my parents said that they would help me. A few weeks later, on the weekend, my parents and I went to greet Karen's parents at their house.
You're late!
When we arrived, Karen looked happy as she welcomed us at the door, but her mother looked very nervous. Her father was sitting in the living room, looking very proper and scary, with his arms crossed on the couch. At the front door, we handed over all the treats that we brought over as a formality, and we went to face him. Not too long after my parents and I arrived, and we greeted them, her father started raising his voice.
"You are a grown adult! How dare you do such a thing! Using my daughter like a piece of meat and tarnishing before you even make her your wife! What kind of household is this that you raise your child like that? First of all, this is your responsibility! Don't you think it's late for you to be coming here to meet me?"
And he was yelling whatever he wanted at us. My parents and I, just as we had planned in advance, said nothing, and we just put our heads down. Seeing that, as though her mother was agreeing with him,
"As a mother, there is nothing more upsetting than to see this."
She had tears in her eyes, as she also yelled at us. Looking at her parents from the side,
Please don't say that. I love David with all my heart. The baby in my stomach would also be sad if you said that to its dad.
As she was playing the damsel in distress, she continued towards me.
You too. If you're going to get married to me, then you should be getting down on your knees to beg my father to please ask for his daughter's hand in marriage and apologize for taking actions that were not in the proper respectable order.
Her parents aside, I was so irritated on the inside that she would even point at me and tell me what to do, especially because I knew that it wasn't my child. Then, when she was done talking, her father joined in again.
"Why don't you say something? And you're going to call yourself a man? Surely you've come here prepared to at least get hit by me once today!
As he raised his voice even more, I found the perfect timing and opened my mouth. I'm very sorry for being quiet until now. I first started with an apology. The father looked at me as if to say, "You're finally apologizing." And Karen looked down at me arrogantly. And then I dropped the bomb on them. To tell you the truth, I actually physically can't have children, I said to them, in a crystal clear voice. Karen and her parents looked like they didn't understand what they were just told. And then their jaws dropped to the ground. That was when my father grabbed his bag and pulled out the clinical exam results, and he placed them in front of her father. And then, very calmly and logically, he started throwing out medical terms that I had never heard before, as he started explaining my condition. With a confident face, unlike anything I've seen before. Even after he finished telling them everything, her father still looked like he was connecting the dots. So this time, he explained it all once again in a much easier way. Sitting next to him, I was also able to understand some things that I didn't know before. The more my father continued to explain, the more I could see Karen's face get tighter and tighter, and her father's face was also looking upset, but in a different way than before. At the end of his explanation, my father said, "If my son were in fact able to have a child, that would be a medical miracle never seen before. In that case, we would love to be able to do a more thorough examination of it at my friend's hospital." He included that with a smile, and Karen's face was completely pale, and she looked like she was about to start crying. As if to rub salt in the wound, my father concluded, "Our explanation is completed at that. Do you have any questions?"
What?
If anything requires further explanation, I would be happy to explain everything once again," he said, without the firm smile leaving his face.
Well, no, your explanation has been understood. It's just that, how do I say this? There are a lot of things out I would like to ask our daughter.
Well, I can imagine that would be the case. My son can't have children even if he wanted to. Even then, your daughter has a baby health book, and there's no doubt that she is pregnant. When you find out exactly what's going on here, we would love for you to inform us as well.
Yes. Please excuse me. Next time, we will be the ones to come to you.
Karen's father was mortified. Her mother was already crying.
We are very sorry.
It took all of her energy to say that, in a small voice like a crying mosquito. All right then. But there isn't much time, and I am worried about the child in her stomach. So the sooner, the better. My father said these last words, and my parents and I left her house. As soon as we walked out the door, I could hear her father's raging voice behind us, followed by the sound of something shattering. And in the end, Karen's wailing cries echoed throughout the building. When my father made eye contact with me, he just said, "Well done," and left me with those 2 words of affirmation. The next weekend, this time, Karen's parents came to our house, along with Karen, whom they clearly dragged with them. She looked like a different person from when she was introducing me to her parents. As soon as they came into the living room, Karen's father began.
We are terribly sorry for how rude we were to you the other day.
And apologized. Were you able to hear from your daughter exactly what was going on?
Yes.
Her father then began to explain everything, piece by piece. As it turns out, just as we suspected, I was not the father of the baby inside her stomach. After a few days of not being able to make plans with me, one day, she was invited to go out drinking with her friend, and she met a certain man, and they began a relationship. However, because that man said he had no intention of getting married to her, and she was afraid to abort the baby, she thought that everything would be fine if she just said that it was my child, and got married to me. Not only that, but because I came from a family of doctors, she thought that she would be able to live in wealth or something like that. And that's why she wanted to hurry up and get married, before the truth came out about the child. She got down on her knees to apologize to me and my parents.
I'm terribly sorry for trying to trick you,
she said. That was where the apologies ended. But after the discussion between the parents was finished, she turned to me.
I'm very sorry for lying to you. But you're the only person that I love. Please, start over with me.
She said. If I had a normal functioning body and wasn't able to catch on to the situation, it would have ended up in her not only cheating on me and betraying me, but tricking me into taking responsibility for that child for the rest of my life. There was no way that I would want to start over with someone like her, who would so easily be able to do such a thing to me. I hadn't gotten engaged to her or anything like that, and I honestly was already thinking about breaking up with her before all of this anyway. So I told her I had no intention of starting over, and ended our relationship. I found out a little while later that the father of the baby in my ex-girlfriend's stomach was actually an employee that was in another department in the same company. And after she was dumped by me, she went him to try to get him to take responsibility, and they got into a huge fight. However, that guy was already engaged to another woman, so of course, that engagement was called off, and my ex-girlfriend was telling him to take responsibility for the child, and everything was a disaster. But that was none of my business anymore.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.